Well, Chris Lytle here, and thanks for being in the audience today. Every week, I record a succinct, immediately applicable, and actionable sales idea for the Instant Sales Training site, which you're now a part of as an Iowa broadcaster. And I'm going to give you a little tour of the Instant Sales Training site a little bit later. But my main objective today is to see if I can get you to buy in to do some of the training, some of your sales training my way, and get you to see sales training as an ongoing, never-ending process. And the automatic sales improvement process is the way to utilize the content you get on Instant Sales Trainings on the website. So your challenge is to get salespeople to listen to those ideas on their own before your meeting, and then you can lead the discussion on the content instead of using your sales meeting to impart the content. So the case I'm trying to make today is that salespeople need to discuss and debate what they're learning, not just hear it, not just hear you talk, not just hear me talk. They need to talk about how the content applies to them, and they need to talk about how they can apply the content to their own prospects and advertisers. And if you do that every week, that's the automatic sales improvement process. If you start and stop, not so automatic and not so much improvement. So the automatic sales improvement process is the way to utilize the content you got on Instant Sales Training, and that's your challenge, getting them to listen to it before the meeting. So people need to talk about the content and how it applies to them. And they need to talk about things in the meeting so that they become that peak performer you're looking for. And that's how you're going to develop the people who develop your revenues. I mean, the automatic sales improvement process is designed to help you do that. So thanks to Sue Toma, Executive Director of the Iowa Broadcasters, and Brian Sather, I think Brian's on the call today, President of your Iowa Broadcasters. You guys are getting this Instant Sales Training as a member benefit this year. So please let people know, these people know you're using it and how you're benefiting from it. So thanks to Sue and Brian and the Iowa Broadcasters Association. So here's my agenda for today's session. Let's have you read that, and then I'll give you 30 seconds, and then we'll move on. So I really want to help you get even better than you are at what you do and deliver on the promise, which is in the title of this webinar, Develop the Salespeople Who Develop Your Revenues. So you got the agenda, and we're off. So I wonder if your story is anything like mine. Let me guess. You were selling up a storm, you're minding your own business, handling your own list, and then bam, the station owner or the market manager calls you into the office and says, hey, you're doing such a great job. We'd like to promote you to sales manager. Oh yeah, we need you to carry a list for a while, but only until you can hire and train some salespeople who are almost as good as you are to take over your list. And then your boss calls a meeting and introduces you to the sales team as their new boss. That's how I remember my promotion. Maybe you have a similar story. So the thing is, now you have 4 roles. You're the top biller still. You're the sales manager now. You're the sales trainer and the coach. So the paradox of management is this. You get paid for doing less of what you got promoted for doing more of. So you're out there selling up a storm. Bam, they make it a manager. And now your job should be developing the people who develop your revenues, but you may feel like you're in a trap. I call it the sales management trap. You're still doing your old job, your old sales job, and you're trying to learn your new job, your new sales management job as sort of on the fly while you're doing your old job. Am I close? Maybe, maybe not. All right. So this is what it looks like on paper, and it's what I wrote about in The Accidental Sales Manager, is that you've got all these non-management duties: sell, 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 handle the national accounts, handle your own list. That's a full-time job right there. And whether you carry a list or not, you've got all these other management tasks. There's always a fire to fight, right? And you got to conduct a sales meeting, monitor sales, deal out the accounts. Now, these stage 2 tasks can keep you from getting to the important but never as urgent stage 3 stuff. And if you're not spending time on the stage 3 human resource development tasks, you may never find the time, you may never be able to develop that next group of superstars to replace you, and you're going to stay trapped. So what I'm trying to do is give you more help with coaching, counseling, developing, motivating, communicating with your people, so that even if you don't have time, you can get it done. So you're pulled in so many directions as a manager. I mean, I get it. You got a minute, boss? How long has a got a minute meeting in your station? It's more than a minute, I know that. I mean, I've had a got a second meeting. Got a second, Chris? I had a got a second meeting that lasted 93 minutes because this person was too afraid to ask me for a minute. Got a second? It was a really big fire we had to put out. So to succeed as a sales manager, you have to get your salespeople to succeed at their jobs. That's the bottom line. Your job is to get people to succeed at their job. That's the job. I'm here to help you do that. All right. The more of these stage 3 sales management tasks you can get to and get good at, the more effective you're going to be as a sales manager or a market manager. I'll give you some great ideas on how to get better at developing people in this quick webinar. And I'm going to show you exactly how to implement what I call the automatic sales improvement process. That's coming up in a minute. But first, I want to share an idea that helped me a lot when I was a brand new sales manager, and that is this: separate the business meeting from the sales training session. Well, why would I do that? Why do we need more meetings? You don't need more meetings. You need 2 separate meetings. And the reason to do that is you're going to have 2 shorter meetings, and you're going to have a more receptive audience when you put on your sales training hat. Because, you see, if you spent the first part of the sales meeting cajoling salespeople about collections, or why haven't you sold more of the sports packages, or, you were going to close that deal last week, what happened to that? So you're yelling at them and you're cajoling them. So when you put on your sales training hat, they're still filtering everything you say through the manager hat. And they're seeing you as the manager and you're their boss, and so separate the business meeting from the sales training session. And try it for a month. I don't think you'll ever go back to the way you used to do it. I mean, so for me, I had the business meeting on Monday morning, and we always had a hotel meeting room, or we'd meet in the back room of a restaurant, have a little breakfast, do the business meeting, get out of there. And then I would hold this is Madison, Wisconsin, looking across beautiful Lake Monona. I would hold the training meeting at noon because a sales trainer named Jim Williams said, you ought to have the sales training session at noon on Wednesday. That way people who are starting to shut down for the weekend will get woken up again, and maybe you'll have a better Thursday and maybe Friday morning. They'll be applying some of the learning because you got them fired up on Wednesday. So there was a bank in downtown Madison, and they let me use their conference room. I was a customer of the bank. I could use it as a training room, and the salespeople could come downtown, and then we'd have the meeting downtown instead of drive way back to the south side of town and have it at the radio station. So I would look into that if I were you. Their car dealers have training rooms, real estate firms around town have training rooms or meeting rooms. Get out of the office, shake things up a bit. Don't always do it at the station. Get out of the station. So there are 3 questions that I have for you. One, if my sales meetings were optional, would my salespeople attend anyway? I wonder about that. Would they attend if they were optional? Here's another question to ask yourself. Don't text me the answer. If I were going to charge $5 for each training session I had, would my salespeople gladly pay to attend? And they pay to attend because every time you run a sales meeting, they know they're going to get ideas to make them money the very next day. So Here's $5. I'll pay $5 admission to your sales meeting. I mean, what do you think? The answer may be yes. If it's not, maybe if you use some of these ideas, it soon will be. And I've got some ideas that are worth paying for. You don't have to charge them, but you could. One more question to ask yourself. Would I have enjoyed being in the audience of that meeting that I just led? You led it, but would you enjoy being an audience member, or would you have enjoyed being an audience member? And if you wouldn't have enjoyed being in that meeting, why not? I mean, I'm enjoying doing this. There's really nothing else I'd rather do than public speaking and talking to people and helping people and training people. But you've got to enjoy it. And having fun in a meeting is possible, and it should be an objective you have. So anyway, we'll keep moving. Are your sales meetings engaging? This one isn't, apparently. I mean, do people participate in your meetings? Do they share ideas? Do they talk about their experiences? And if they don't, it may be because of this. The default mode for most new sales trainers is the lecture. There's too much one-way communication. Let me tell you what I did. Let me tell you what to do. Here's the training. And we don't have time to have a discussion. We got to get this out. But telling ain't training. And I'm not just saying that. There's a book called Telling Ain't Training. There's a picture of it. You can go to Amazon right now and buy it for, I think, $18. Oh, wrong. $23. It's published by the American Society for Training and Development, ASTD. That's a good organization, and it's a good book, especially for new trainers, people who want to add more variety to their training, people who want to have a deep philosophy of training. Start there. Telling Ain't Training. Good book. But, it's not surprising that we default to the lecture mode when we become a manager or sales trainer. I mean, your teachers in high school, your professors in college stood at the front of the class and lectured. And maybe your sales manager before you did the same thing, tell you what to do. A lot of telling, a lot of one way. So now that you're the sales manager and the trainer, you sort of have the tendency to keep lecturing because that's the way you were taught. But there is a better way, and I'm going to explain that in the next few minutes. But first, some things you should know about. This guy is Bob Pike. And Bob Pike is retired now. This screenshot of him, I think, was 2011. It's a YouTube video. But there are seminars for people who do seminars. And Bob Pike has traveled the world doing Train the Trainer seminars. So the screenshot is one of his YouTube videos. It's a keynote called Increasing Retention. And it's not keeping salespeople from leaving. It's from getting people to remember what they learned in your training. So that's retention. How do you increase retention of what people learn so that they can actually put it into action? So I would watch that on YouTube if I were you. You just go to YouTube and you type in Pike increasing retention, and that should pop right up, and it's 40 minutes long. Watching it and applying some of his lessons will make you a better trainer quickly. I've been in the audience of several times for Bob Pike's presentations. Went first at a training magazine conference in the 80s, and then when I became a member of the National Speakers Association, he was always there putting on sessions. I had breakfast with him one day and talked training with him. Great man. Big influence on my style, and I think the best thing I can do in this session is to share my 7 favorite Bob Pike-isms with you, some of the sayings that I heard as an audience member and that stuck with me and made me a better trainer. So first one is adults learn by doing, not by hearing how the trainer did it. So you've got to get them involved. You've got to get them to do something, to discuss something, to apply something, not just lecture to them. Adults learn by doing. not by hearing how the trainer did it. So you ignore this at your own risk. Selling is a shared experience that salespeople are having all alone. And they need to talk about what they do with other people who do what they do. So the best place for that to happen, in my opinion, is at the sales meeting, because you don't want people to feel alone in their distress and misery. Nobody else is feeling like they are. They're rejected. People hang up on them. They're not getting their calls returned. And you want them to share the happy stuff too, the successes, the good times, the big closes, the customer success stories, the good relationships, both of those things, the good and the bad. All right, next Bob Pikeism. Training is a process, not an event. It begins long before the participants show up, and it continues until we see results in the workplace. So it's not a start and stop thing anymore. So we used to think of training as something you sent people to, and now we're saying that learning is something that has to be embedded in the workflow. So it's something I do daily or weekly. So it's why I'm calling the system the automatic sales improvement process, because it comes to you automatically. You don't have to do anything, get an email, boom. And because it's ongoing and it's not event-based, it's something people can do in the field. It's not something you have to go to. All right. Number 3, Bob Pike. Number 3. At the end of your training session, your participants should be more impressed with their ability to do the job you're training them to do than they are with your ability to do the job you're training them to do. And that is big. You can tell them how great you are, but they want to leave the meeting. You want them to leave the meeting knowing how good they are and how good they're going to be, not just how good you are and how you did it or how I did it. So this next one, big one, people rarely resist their own ideas. They'll resist your ideas, but they never resist their own ideas. And if you want buy-in, you want them to come up with ideas and act on them. You want them to encourage them to have ideas of their own. Now I'm going to change pictures here. This guy is Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall Goldsmith is a speaker, author, world-renowned executive coach. He's kind of getting up in years. He's giving away a lot of his stuff online right now. But he's the guy. He's really good. And he cautions, don't add too much value to your employees' ideas. You know, you might say to somebody, that's a great idea, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And then you add your idea. But what Goldsmith says is, you might improve the quality of the idea by 5%, but the salesperson's commitment to executing the idea goes down 50%. Why? Because now it's your idea instead of his or her idea. People rarely resist their own ideas. That's Bob Pike, but they will resist yours. And when you add value, you lower the commitment. So this is one more thing from Marshall Goldsmith. Effectiveness of execution is what's the quality of the idea, A, and B, what's my commitment to make it work. So don't add too much value to your salespeople's ideas. Will you take that advice? I think it's good advice, but whether you take it or not, it's up to you. So let's get back to Bob Pike. Your role as a teacher is not to transmit knowledge, but to place your learners in a place of discovery and anticipation. Use exercises and activities that activate your learner's imagination and get them involved. And I can hear you saying, I'm already crazy busy, I'm swamped, I don't have time to do that. Where am I going to get something to get them involved and activate their imaginations? Well, you could go to Amazon and buy the Complete Games Trainers Play, 287 ready-to-use training games. I have used these through my whole 35-year career. I met Ed Scannell, who was one of the authors of this book, but I just went on Amazon before this session started, and you can buy that thing for $147. You can buy other books with games trainers play starting at $14 on Amazon. and you get 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 games, go through them, pick one or two. Now, if you don't want to spend any money, Google free games for trainers. See what comes up. There are some things will come up. There's some websites on games for trainers. So the big thing about this is, though, you got to find a game, play the game, and then you discuss, well, what did that game teach you? What did you learn by playing that game about yourself, about strategy? And then you have, well, how does that apply to selling? And how does it apply to dealing with your customers? So you have to do 3 stages: the game, play it, process it, what does it mean, what did you learn, and then application, how does it apply to me and my clients and my sales job? So you just don't play games, you play games for a reason, to teach people things, to let them discover and activate their minds and imaginations, Bob Pike said. Learning is directly proportional to the amount of fun you have. Are you having fun at your own sales training sessions? If you're not, as I said before, it's not going to be fun for them. So I'm enjoying sharing these ideas with you, and I hope you can sense that. I remember when I was doing a lot of one-day seminars and annual sales meetings for people, the one thing I dreaded was the golf tournament or the golf outing, because I felt comfortable speaking, but when I was doing the golf outing, I was 23 handicap, and I just didn't want people to see me. So have fun. Have fun training. That's one of the things I can say about my life on the road is I had the best job anybody could have, the worst commute, but the best job. There was never a time in my career where I went, oh my God, I got to do another hour. I just loved it. Learning hasn't taken place until behavior has changed. That's the 7th Bob Pikeism. And part of your discussion at every sales meeting should be, what are you going to do about what you learned? And in your one-on-one sessions, when you're coaching, you're asking people, how are you applying the training we're giving you? And what have you used? And you're coaching people to work on their behavior and change it. I mean, that's what you're doing, that, aren't you? I mean, that's part of the job. It's a hard part of the job, but it's an essential part of the job. Okay, so Instant Sales Training, the website. So this is the website I built. I'm going to give you a tour in a second. I built this for time-starved sales managers. It's filled with content for your sales meetings. These instant sales training sessions, I sometimes call them knowledge bites that are easily digestible sales ideas, knowledge bites, get that. There's a new one every week. Usually it goes up Monday afternoon. And all you have to do is download it and email it to your salespeople. They listen on their phones or on their tablets. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to make the case first that short attention span sales training is where things are going. And you need to be part of this trend. That's my take. So last time I spoke at the Iowa Broadcasters Convention, that's the Marriott in West Des Moines. I had that picture. And over the years, I've lost count of how many people have come up to me at the beginning of a seminar and said, Chris, if I can get one good idea, this will be a great seminar. Happens hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And it used to frustrate me. I was frustrated when people, I had one good idea. And I would think to myself, I'm going to do 6 hours of training. And all you want is one good idea? I mean, I could give you a good idea in 2 minutes and we could go home. But let's do a reality check. People aren't going to implement a dozen ideas and new behaviors the week after a 6-hour sales training event. I mean, you think about how hard it is to change 1 or 2 of your own behaviors, and doing more than 1 or 2 at a time. Doing 1 or 2 at a time is about all we can handle, maybe 1. Okay, so I was speaking at a Radio Advertising Bureau conference, and I just delivered this breakout session, standing room only, 75 minutes, all the jokes worked, people were clapping and cheering. And there was this line of people, they were lined up getting ready to shake my hand and talk to me a little bit. And I was feeling great, and this one guy came up and said, "That was a pretty good speech, Lionel, but I got to tell you, I learned more at the bar after these things than I do from any of you speakers." I said, "You do?" He said, "Yep." He said, "Because that's where my partner and I compare notes, and we think about what we can take back to the market, and we think about how we're going to introduce it to the team. And until we've kicked it around, I really can't say I've learned anything. So I got to compare notes, I got to discuss it, I got to figure out how to put it into action, then I know it. So I learn more at the bar than I do from any of the speakers." And that was a humbling thing to hear, but it was a crucial lesson for me. And it prompted me to elicit much more participation in my own training sessions. And I want to share what I think it means to you. Now, whether you know it or not, or admit it or not, or like it or not, there's a meeting after your sales meeting. You're not there, but it's at the coffee shop around the corner. And that's where the salespeople who've been to your meeting sit with each other and debrief and discuss the content of the meeting they just attended. How can we use this? Or is this going to work? Can we sell this package? It occurs when or because the salespeople don't get to participate fully in the meeting themselves. So they have another meeting after the meeting without you and discuss what they think they learned at your meeting and whether or not they can implement it. Now, I get that there are times when one-way communication is necessary, and I understand that I'm communicating one way in this session today. I don't love it, but that's the way webinars are. But a sales meeting can be much more participative. So go for engagement, go for involvement. Now, the trend today is doing shorter and shorter training sessions. You probably recognize the Sydney Opera House. And I've flown to Sydney to a radio conference and done 45 minutes. Think about that. There I am. I'm teaching the bullseye theory of advertising at the Commercial Radio Australia. You can probably see that in the corner of the picture, left side of the picture. Commercial Radio Australia's sales conference. 42-hour round trip, 45-minute presentation. I got to open for John Cleese, and there's my wife, business partner wife, Sarah McCann, and we got to meet John Cleese in the green room after the session, so I'm digressing, I get that. But one more story about why shorter training sessions are better. One time Sarah and I signed up for a 3-day golf academy at the Eagle Ridge Resort in Galena, Illinois. And my buddy Larry, who's the club champion at his course, and he was the year before we went on the golf academy, he said, "Chris," he said, "I'm not impressed. I mean, if I were to go to a 3-day golf school, I'd probably get worse. 3-day golf school, I'd get worse." Now here's a single handicapped golfer, and he wouldn't go to a 3-day golf school. And he was right. I got back from that 18 hours of lessons in one weekend, and I had 17 different swing thoughts, and 11 of them started with "don't," and I couldn't remember all the things I'd learned. I couldn't make the changes that they told me to make, and it was a bad deal. So Larry, said, "You should take lessons." But what he said is, go to the pro, work on one thing for a half an hour, then practice it on the range or putting green, whatever, and then try the one new thing in a match, and then go back to the pro and take about the same lesson to make sure you're incorporating that one thing. Now, if you could imagine, he does this, you know, every couple of weeks. He's working with a pro, and he does it spring, summer, early fall. And whether you play golf or not, I think you can understand that taking a series of half-hour lessons and really integrating it into what you do is going to be better than going to a marathon training session or a 3-day golf academy in my case. So that's the case. You know, smaller units, work on smaller amounts of content. So my advice is slow down. You train too fast. I mean, the pressurized water coming out of a hose can knock a person over. And too often we are training like this. We got so much to get in, you know, we got to get across, and it comes out in a torrent. And because we have a limited amount of training time, we give people more than they can handle. So my analogy would be, you want to drip this, a sales drip, a constant drip of information, drip, more next week, drip, and it never stops. So that's the automatic sales improvement process. Socrates said, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only get them to think. He said it in Greek. He said it 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. But what I want to do with instant sales training is to get people thinking about how they sell and thinking about the subtle refinements they can make to get better at what they do, to become true professional salespeople. So the big idea here is it lets you continually improve your person's sales skills, because each session is 2 to 6 minutes, and you send the audio to the salespeople 3 to 5 days ahead of the meeting so they can listen to it in their car, in the waiting room of a client, at lunchtime, and then you discuss the content in your sales meeting for 20, 25 minutes. And over the course of the year, you've given them 16 to 20 more hours of sales learning. And it's the kind of learning that Socrates would approve of, because you're getting people to think and discuss what it is they do. So I'm going to toggle over here. This was the sales, let's see, where is it? This is the email that went out yesterday. And if you didn't get this yesterday, give us a call. The number is on the website, or send me an email, chris.lytle@instantSalesTraining.com. But the topic we posted this week is how top performing salespeople think about selling. And so I even forgot to put the link on yesterday, but if you click here, it takes you right to your Instant Sales Training site, coming up right now. And I've already logged in, so it took me right to how top performing salespeople think about sales. You can listen right on this bar here. You can listen online with your headphones or with your speakers. And hey, I like this. I'm gonna assign this. So you click here, download the audio clip. Click here, download your slide. Click here and download your discussion questions. Now, you only need the slide or the discussion questions, because the discussion questions are on the slide in the notes pages section. And if you don't use a meeting slide, you can just use the discussion questions. It's always a best practice to listen to the audio clip, the Instant Sales Training audio, the Knowledge Bite, with the discussion questions in front of you. So you're looking at the discussion questions, and then you write down 2 or 3 extra discussion questions, because you know your team better than I do. So you've got that. Now, I want to show you a few other things. I'm looking at a different monitor, which is why I'm turning away from you. But here's the page where you can get everything, this week's Knowledge Bite. You can look at the must-have selling skills, and that's all of our Knowledge Bites, the whole archive. Or you can go here and say, I don't want an attitude meeting. I want people getting more first meetings. So you can click on first meeting link, and it takes you to how to get more meetings, prospecting ideas. And so also we have an archive here of the last 25 weeks of content. So if you skip something, or you didn't like this week's session, you can, or you want to have 3 sales meetings this week and have 3 instant sales training sessions and give people more training. You can get more from the archive. So there's plenty there. Also, broadcast sales webinars. There's 4 hours of broadcast-specific training there, longer training sessions, sales management, and we've got bonus content. See if that comes up. A little video on the cone of learning. This that you're looking at, there I am. I'm doing a supercharged sales management video. I was invited to Sydney to do this keynote, and I didn't have availability, so they sent a 2-person camera crew to my living room, and I did this session that ran in Sydney at this conference, and I got to have the video. So I'm giving you that, and this is where you get more management training. And then here's the special report, Shaking Up Your Sales Meetings, and it gives you 22 ideas for adding variety to your sales meetings. So all that stuff is on there. There's a blog. I'm posting some articles on there, and there's at least, I haven't counted them lately, but there's 125 plus instant sales training sessions on this website. So lots of content. All right. So this is what the slide looks like for this week. You can see the discussion questions are below. This is what, if you're playing it in a meeting, here's the PDF with the discussion questions. So that's what you download. And then all you have to do is send your team an email, attach the audio. It's an MP3, 5 megs. So please listen to this MP3 and be ready to discuss at our next meeting. And that's how fast you can put your sales meeting together, which, not bad. So that's the whole concept, and that's why it's the automatic sales improvement process, because this happens every week automatically without you having to do anything except go to the website. So, I mean, I'm asking you to consider one more thing, and that's making your instant sales training session an honors class as opposed to a lecture. So that means you're assigning the instant sales training knowledge bite ahead of the session. You're having people listen and digest it before they get there, and then you're going to lead the discussion because you now know that the real learning occurs after they've consumed the content. It's when they're beating up the content, debating it, discussing it, and how does it apply to me. So the world's changed since I was a young radio advertising salesperson in the 70s. I mean, my boss, Phil Fisher, brought this 33 1/3 RPM record, turned it on, and listened, and we listened in our meeting room. He fell asleep. We listened to the J. Douglas Edwards audio. And then when I got into the business, I had a product called Lytleisms, Lytle Instant Sales Meetings, and I would have a 15 to 20 minute thing on a cassette with a little handout to go with it. And people, I sent out hundreds and hundreds of these to people over the years. And then I said, you know, why am I sending out CDs? Or first it was cassettes, then it was CDs, and people even complain, hey, why did you switch to CDs? I don't have a CD player. Why? And then I just decided one day, I'm going to put this online. I'm not going to send out CDs. I'm not going to send out cassettes. We're going to do this the right way. Put it online, let people grab it. Let people send it out to their people. So here's the idea behind the honors class in selling. I got it from Beer and Circus, which is how big time sports is crippling undergraduate education. Dr. Murray Sperber writes this. He says, a high school senior to college was on a college visiting tour. And after sitting on an honors class at a big time university, the student said, they spent an hour on the professor's specialty. The kids had done all the required reading and even the supplementary reading. I mean, they asked the professor constant questions. They interrupted the professor. They argued all the time with the professor and each other. It must be hard to teach those kinds of people. And the interviewer said, no, that's like teaching graduate students. Most faculty members can roll out of bed at 3 a.m. and do that. But try teaching regular undergraduates who haven't done the reading, who won't say anything. That's hard teaching. It's straight uphill. Regular undergraduates can crush faculty egos, whereas honor students flatter the professorial psyche and give the faculty the illusion of being great teachers. Some educators term honor students pre-learners. In other words, they master most things on their own with no need of formal instruction. So, I mean, the idea is, what if your weekly sales meeting were an honors class? You could let salespeople pre-learn things on their own, let them have the content 3 to 5 days ahead of the session, and they could even bring a story about using this information to the meeting. So, we just lost Sir Roger Bannister March 4th. He was 88 years old. He's the guy that broke the 4-minute mile barrier, and they talk about the Bannister effect. I mentioned that to some sales manager a couple of years ago, and I just got this blank look, and I said, you know the Bannister effect? Well, I used to have a book called The 100 Greatest Sports Heroes when I was a kid, and of course it was all about the sports figures of the 40s and 50s, Jim Thorpe and Roger Bannister and Joe Louis. But one of my favorite stories was about when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile barrier. For 9 years, the world record stood at 4 minutes, 1 second, and 1 4/10 seconds. So 4:101. 4 minutes, 1 second, 4/10. And some were speculating that, you might die if you extended that much effort. But he finally, in 1954, ran a 3-minute, 59-second, 0.4 miles. So he broke the 4-minute barrier by 0.6 of a second. And his world record lasted a month and a half. And then John Landry, the New Zealander, beat it. And if you are following track and field or not, you know that, in 1957, by the end of 1957, 16 other people had broken the 4-minute mile. So the Bannister effect is showing people that it can be done, and once people, oh, he could do it, well, I could do that. And I want people to listen to the knowledge bites ahead of time so they can bring their stories of using the information to the meeting, and people will say, boy, if she can do that, I guess I could do that too. If they could close it, she could close an $80,000 deal. Maybe I should go out and ask for more. So, in what great salespeople do, Michael Bosworth and Ben Zolden talk about that we learn a lot from each other's stories, and that firefighters have long understood the value of peer-to-peer story sharing. And every night in firehouses across the country, firefighters take part in a tradition where they share stories about their day. And it's more than a social ritual. It means that it's a means by which each other's successes and failures build the institutional memory within the department. So you want everybody to have this collective knowledge that everybody shares. And sales managers can foster similar peer-to-peer learning by encouraging reps to share their stories, including dumbass selling moments with each other. So successes and what they call dumbass selling moments. So that's where we have the honors class in selling. Some companies call it the Monday morning campfire. Whatever you call it, it is a very powerful way to train. So I recommend that you take a look at this. You can Google in search of learning agility. There's several websites that let you download this for free. It is 10 years old now, and I want to give you my 3 big takeaways, and then we'll wrap this up. One of the takeaways from this is clearly organizational learning agility has become massively dependent on an organization's ability to pool and warehouse business relevant knowledge. And they also say, learning continues to shift from being discrete and event-based to becoming continuous and embedded in the workflow. And finally, there's an airtight case for learning in shorter and shorter units. That's where there's so much to learn that we have to learn it in shorter and shorter spurts. This is Donald Kirkpatrick, the late Donald Kirkpatrick, founder of the American Society for Training and Development, ASTD again. And he suggested there are 4 levels for measuring training's effectiveness, and here they are. The first one was reactions. On a 1 to 10 scale, how did you like the webinar? On a 1 to 10 scale, how was the seminar? Did the speaker seem to know what he was talking about? On a 1 to 10 scale. So that's the reaction right after the event. Then there's learning, which is, you debrief someone when they get back from the training. What did you learn? How can you apply it? What are you going to do differently as a result of that training we sent you to? So that's the debrief. And then there's transfer. Somebody actually did something they learned in the training room in the client's office. So getting the information from the training room to the client's office is the longest journey, because without transfer, there are no results. Hey, I used that closing line I learned from Lytle, and I closed an $80,000 annual. Jack Phillips in 1996 wrote a book called Accountability and Human Resource Development. He said, we really ought to be able to measure the ROI. So you don't really have a lot invested in this website or in the automatic sales improvement process because it's a member benefit from the Iowa Broadcasters Association. But I think you're going to get results, and I know it's going to help you with the sales learning, and the coaching that you do in the discussion afterwards will help you with the transfer. So here's the dirty little secret, the inside joke that professional speakers crack at our conventions. And we always say, hey, it's easier to get a new audience, come up with a new speech. Now, there I am at the Missouri Broadcasters Association doing the exact same speech I did at the Iowa Broadcasters Association. But you have to come up with fresh content week after week. Now, who's got the time? I know there's Sarah. She told me that I used to plan my Monday morning sales meeting while I was watching 60 Minutes on Sunday night, and worse yet, if I was really getting into 60 Minutes, I planned it in the car on the way to the office getting ready to conduct it. My buddy Garfield Ogilvie says the challenge for sales managers is that we're a limited source of content. We work with our salespeople all week. We share our points of view with them. So there's a limit on how much more we have to offer them. So my coaching, whether it's in the car or in the sales office, calls upon my perspective and my experience. And while I'm rich in knowledge and well-read and competent, there's just so much I can tell them before I start to repeat myself. And there's nothing that turns off an audience like, well, I've heard that before. So, Garfield is a great proponent of this product and has used it very successfully. And so I wanted to get his point of view in there as well. All right, so only 10% of the workers have a learning mindset. That's according to Harvard Business Review. That means they're not going to seek out new learning unless it's part of a job requirement. So your job is to require it. Require it and reap the benefits. The better you get, the better you better get. The question to ask your salespeople is this, and one of the things you can do right after this session is just say, hey, what are you reading or studying? Maybe it's audio or video content, or you're on a YouTube channel. What are you doing to improve your knowledge and selling skills and your attitude? And I bet you'll get a lot of blank looks. What do you mean, reading? About selling? And you'll also get one or two good recommendations. So as we come to the end of this, I'm recommending that if you're not happy with the answers you get, what are you reading? Maybe you look into getting my books, 23 Shockingly Simple Sales Ideas. That's the latest book. It's really what it is. It's a compilation of my 23 favorite instant sales training scripts. And you can have a look at it online on Amazon. It's only available on Amazon. You can read the foreword by Garfield Ogilvie. You can read the first chapter, or my introduction, the first chapter. And the first chapter is a story about how I got fired from my radio job because I disparaged a customer, and how I got it back the very next day by changing my attitude. There was this is going to be the cover. I'm glad we chose this one. All right, so that's what we accomplished today. I think you've got ideas on how to do all of these things, and I'm here for the next 10 or 15 minutes to take questions. You can text them in if you have any, and I'll hang out while you